Thanksgiving, the annual celebration and holiday that occurs on the fourth Thursday in November in the United States, has a long history and a complicated history. The usual narrative about the event that inspired this holiday and celebration is that in 1621 the Plymouth colonists from England that had arrived in New England and the Native American Wampanoag people shared an autumn harvest feast that is acknowledged as one of the first Thanksgiving celebrations by the colonists, the first Thanksgiving feast and celebration in American history. A celebration to celebrate friendship with the natives who had given the new colonists from Europe some of their food, and God's grace who had ensured their survival during and after the arduous journey across the sea. A mythic origin of Thanksgiving, meant to give customs about unification, meaning in a greater context, and to bring people together, a custom created in a Durkheimian sense to unite people, unifying natives together with the colonists, and to be a story about united Americanhood under divine grace. But of course, history, as usual, is often a lot more complicated than this simple narrative. And there has been a lot of criticism against this traditional narrative about Thanksgiving. One common criticism is that the traditional narrative paints a too positive view of the relations between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people, which masks the long and bloody history of conflict between Native Americans and European settlers that occurred throughout American history. And the Thanksgiving tradition and its history and celebration is masking this long history of violence against the natives. Though it should be said that the Native Americans were not a unified group and relations with various groups were very different at different times. Another criticism against the traditional narrative of the Thanksgiving celebration is that the celebrations, or rather what lies behind the celebration of Thanksgiving, is actually older than the date of 1621, as we have many examples of Thanksgiving rituals and similar before 1621. And Thanksgiving in America began as a day of giving thanks for the blessings of the harvest and of the preceding year's abundance. And similar holidays occur throughout the world during autumn, in Germany and in the Nordic countries from October to November. So this isn't something unique to the English or to the Americans during this time. And you also see it in the later invention of the Oktoberfest in Bayern. Though that is a later invention in Germany, but it does go back to older traditions that were found all throughout Europe. And in other places, even in ancient times, the Egyptians, Greeks and Romans feasted and paid tribute to their gods after the fall harvests. And the ancient Jewish harvest festival of Sukkot has been practiced since ancient times. So Thanksgiving is the result of a long tradition of harvest festivals during the fall season. And for example, in 1619, the Margaret, a ship, arrived by the way of the James River at Berkeley 100 in Charles City County, Virginia, on December the 4th, and it was proclaimed that we ordain that this day of our ship's arrival at the place assigned for plantation in the land of Virginia shall be yearly and perpetually kept holy as a day of thanksgiving to Almighty God. This occurred 2 years before the history of the traditional Thanksgiving narrative occurred, if it did indeed occur at all, as we do have lacking contemporary sources for it occurring, unlike this event in 1619. But it's not the first example of a Thanksgiving tradition in the English-speaking colonies of America. Possibly the first example is in Canada, in fact, during the year 1578. In the records for the voyage of Martin Frobisher from England in search of the Northwest Passage records an example of a Thanksgiving feast. And outside of the English-speaking world, but still in the territory belonging to the United States today. We have documented examples of similar rituals to Thanksgiving services made in the 16th century by Spaniards in their territories in what is today Texas and Florida. Catholics, Lutherans, Puritans, Calvinists and others all did have various examples of harvest festivals that were similar to Thanksgiving and that they celebrated in the New World in the Americas. Though the secular or religious nature of these celebrations differed a lot among various groups and denominations of Christians. Though it should be said that the Thanksgiving of today, the American holiday's true origin, was the New England Calvinist Thanksgiving. Never coupled with a Sabbath meeting, the Puritan observances were special days set aside during the week for thanksgiving and praise in response to God's providence. Thanksgiving before the Revolutionary War against the Crown was sometimes church doctrine, sometimes not, and more secular in its origins in the new colonies. It differed a lot locally and was a local practice rather than something that was always practiced in all of the colonies. And it was not until in 1789, when George Washington issued the first Thanksgiving proclamation by the national government of the United States, that it became a national matter and something bigger than just a local matter. In his speech, he called upon Americans to express their gratitude for the happy conclusion to the country's War of Independence and the successful ratification of the United States Constitution. His successors, John Adams and James Madison, also designated days of Thanksgiving during their terms as presidents. Though Thanksgiving was still not an official, annually reoccurring event, and it wasn't until in 1817 in the state of New York that Thanksgiving became officially adopted as an annual holiday, the first of what would later become several states afterwards adopting it as being an official holiday. Though it would still remain a state matter and not a federal national matter. And it wasn't until in 1863, in the midst of the Civil War, that President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national Thanksgiving Day to be held each November on the last Thursday. Before, Thanksgiving had just been a custom without any officialness to the regularity of it on a federal level. The successors of Abraham Lincoln as presidents followed his example of annually declaring the final Thursday in November to be a Thanksgiving Day. But in 1939, President Franklin D. Roosevelt broke with this tradition, which caused great controversy, as he placed the Thanksgiving on the fourth Thursday rather than the last Thursday of November, probably as a ploy in order to jumpstart the economy, as he wanted the Thanksgiving and the Thanksgiving purchasing wave to coincide with economical stimulant packages that he had prepared. In any case, people began referring to November the 30th as the Republican Thanksgiving and November the 23rd as the Democratic Thanksgiving, or Franksgiving, as a result of this. You got to admit, it was a pretty powerful and funny slogan name. But despite this slogan, on December the 26th, 1941, President Roosevelt signed a bill that also went through Congress that defined Thanksgiving and was, for the first time, making the date of Thanksgiving a matter of federal law, as the fourth Thursday of November became the officially legalized, recognized day of Thanksgiving, which caused even further controversy, as Thanksgiving was considered also a religious holiday. Fixing its date raised questions about freedom of religion and controversy about the federal state's neutrality on religious matters. Questions which to this day are still unresolved and are still at times discussed, as a case has not been brought up before the Supreme Court regarding this settlement of the date of Thanksgiving and its constitutional legality. And due to American cultural influence, Thanksgiving has also become an official holiday on the island of Grenada, in Liberia, in Brazil, the Philippines, and on the island of Saint Lucia, going from being a local unofficial holiday among several similar holidays and celebrations in what was to become the United States to becoming the official holiday in several countries all around the world. Thanksgiving has had a complex and long history, and it has been a pleasure to give you a bit of its history in this video. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities.